cannot use a calculator for. Like if I give you a picture like this on the quiz and I say, what's the system of inequalities? Your calculator won't be able to do this for you. So you'll have to understand how to solve these types of problems pretty much by hand. You can use the graphing calculator to help you determine like which symbol, and I'll show you then once we get to that. But for these problems, you will have to have a basic understanding. The calculator can't obviously take this picture and understand what it's doing. So in example 6, we are going to be taking this system of inequalities and creating the actual inequality equations, or not equations, but creating the actual formulas for it. So you have two lines. We have this slanted line that's decreasing and this vertical line here. For these two lines, we have to make the equations for them, and then we can start with the equations, and then we can insert the correct inequality symbol to help us figure out the correct shading and what it should be compared to the symbol. So let's start with the easier one. Let's look at the vertical line right here. So if this was an equation, if this was just a straight line, no shading, this would be x equals 3. So I know that this would be x equals 3 because every vertical line starts with x. And it's at 3 on the x, which is where I got the 3 from. Now, because we are in an inequality section, this equal sign is not going to be an equal sign. It's either going to be a less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to sign. So now to determine that, we first will look at the type of line it is. Because it's a dotted line, that means it's going to be either a less than or greater than symbol. So I know it's going to be either one of the top two. So then we look at the shading. The shading for the system only has the actual answer to the system's full shaded area. So if you're looking at this line, some of the parts are not shaded in because they erased them. But if we look to the line, there's two sides that this line splits the coordinate plane into, either the left-hand side or the right-hand side. If you look on the right-hand side, nothing is colored in, which means the answers are not to the right of the line. If you look to the left of the line, only part of the left-hand side is colored in, only this part here that's also underneath this slanted line. So even though this little triangle part up here is not colored in, it's still going to be anything to the left of the line. They erased this part so that it didn't get confusing with all of the extra shading. They're only showing you the final answer. So the shading to the left of this line is going to be where the answers are going to be. Since it's to the left of 3, anything that's to the left of 3 is anything less than it. So the first inequality would be x is less than 3. Now, like I said, they did not shade in all of this part up here, but anything to the left of this vertical line is a part of the solution, but they decided to erase this part that's not a part of the second inequality solution because it's not needed. So they only colored in the part that's for both. So you have to kind of understand that as well. The next inequality is not going to be as easy because you will have to figure out the actual equation for it. A vertical and horizontal line is easy because it's just going to be x equals or y equals. But once we have an actual slanted line, we're going to have to look at the y-intercept and the slope. So looking at this slanted line, I see that it has a y-intercept of 2. And looking for the slope, it looks like it pretty much goes down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. So it goes down 1 over 1, meaning it has a slope of -1. So if this was an equation, this would be y equals -x plus 2. Since it starts at 2 on the y-axis, and it has a slope of -1. Now, since it's not an equation, I'm going to erase the equal sign, and I'm going to decide which symbol to use. This, again, is a dotted line, so it's either going to be one of these two symbols. It's either going to be less than or greater than. And then this is where it gets a little bit confusing. For a vertical or horizontal line, it's easy to see less than or greater than because it's going to literally be either less than that number or greater than that number, which is either going to be to the left, to the right, up or below, or above or below. But for a slanted line, it's kind of confusing. So what you would have to do is figure out a point to test, and almost as if you're doing the problem backwards, you would have to insert that point in, and then it will help you decide which one to use. I'm going to use 0, 0. 0, 0 is a part of the solution because it's in the shaded region. So when I replace in 0 in for y and 0 in for x, this will say 0 is blank, negative 0 plus 2 is 2. And we want this to be a true statement. Out of these two options here, less than or greater than, the only one that would be a true statement is if I use a less than symbol, because 0 is less than 2. So that would help me figure out that, okay, if the shading is down here, 0, 0 is a part of that shading, so it would have to be a less than symbol. So the inequalities that would represent this system would be x is less than 3 and y is less than negative x plus 2. If I give you a picture of something like this on Thursday and I say, what's the system of inequalities, you will have to come up with like the part where it says y blank negative x plus 2. But this part here, you could actually use your calculator and try all of them to see which one it would be and which one it would look like, and I'll show you that once we get to that part. What I want you to do, please, is try example 7. This has 3 inequalities, but thankfully one is vertical, one is horizontal, so those are 2 easy ones, and then the third one is another one that's slanted. So go ahead and try that. In a couple minutes, we'll go over them together. All right, so let's go over example 7 together. It was hard for me to see the x and y axis, so I bolded this out in blue here. We have 3 inequalities. Let's start with the easy ones first, and then we'll do the most difficult one last. This one is going to have 3 separate inequalities in the system because there's 3 lines here. Let's start with the vertical line. So the vertical line is this one on the left here. It's kind of confusing with the way that the graph is numbered. So each actual line on the graph is actually going by 2s. So if I'm looking at this vertical line, which I'll highlight in red, so I'm looking here, I origin is right here. It's going by 2, so this is -2 right here, and then next to it, the next line is -4, which means that this is actually at -3. So this vertical line would be x equals -3, but because it is an inequality in shading, we have to figure out if it's x is less than -3, x is greater than -3, x is less than or equal to -3, or x is greater than or equal to -3. So we look at where the shading occurs. Now they only are showing the intersection of all 3 of the shaded areas. So it's not going to be the entire thing that's shaded, and I know it might look a little bit different. Mine's colorful, obviously yours isn't. But if you look at where the shading occurs, if I'm looking at this vertical line, the part that's shaded is to the right of it. So this little triangle that's in the shaded final answer is to the right of this line. And this line is a solid line, which means the only options would be less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. And because anything to the right of a number on a number line is bigger than the actual number, this would have to be x is greater than or equal to -3. So that's the first line. The second one I'll highlight in green so those of you at home can see what I'm doing. Here is the line that I'm looking at now. This is a horizontal line. Horizontal lines start with y, and where it's intersecting the y-axis here, since everything is going by 2's, it looks like it's pretty much even to be right in the middle there. It looks like it's going to be at -1. And the equation for this, if this was just an equation, would be y equals -1, but because this is an inequality, it's going to either be y is less than -1, y is greater than -1, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to -1. Now, because it's a dotted line, the only 2 options would be less than or greater than. And looking at this horizontal line, anything above it is where the shaded region is located. They didn't include all of the shaded region because it's confusing. They showed only the final answer. But anything above it would be a solution. So what symbol would that be? Less than or greater than? Anyone? Yes, thank you. Greater than. So y is greater than -1. And then the last one that we have here, I'll just highlight this one again in black. We're looking at this line. This line I chose last because this one requires the most work, since we have to find the slope and y-intercept, put it into slope-intercept form. Looks like it crosses the y-axis here. It tells us it's at 4, so that's our y-intercept. And then if I'm looking at the slope, I don't know, I kind of messed up. I'm highlighting so much of it. It looks like it goes down. This is going by 2, so down 2, 4. I'm trying to find 2 points that work. Hold on. All right, so I'm definitely going to use the y-intercept as a point, and I'm scrolling through trying to find another point that's perfect. And to be honest, I don't really see another one. I guess we would have to estimate this one. I don't like this problem at all.
I think it might cost it like -1.
Yeah, that's what
Which one did you
I
use?
just did
-1.
y-intercept. Like it start.
The y-intercept?
Or wait,
And then the x-intercept?
and then the like right next to it, like the line, like
This one?
no, the one that goes up.
This one?
Yeah, I think that's like the middle.
Yeah, these definitely all, they look pretty perfect. I would never give you this exact type of problem on a quiz because you would have to estimate. All the points that I'm creating, like that, this looks like it's at, this is so confusing, but this looks like it's at 2, sorry, this right here. All right, so I'm confusing myself. This is the y-intercept, right? And this, since this is the y-axis, this y-intercept is not what I originally thought. I don't know why. I thought this line here was the y-intercept. It's not. This right here is the y-axis, so it crosses the y-axis here, which would be at, is it at 1? All of these numbers are confusing then.
Yeah, I put 1.
Yeah, this is 1 since these are all going by 2. So the y-intercept is 0, 1. And then I'm using this point as well because this point's perfect. And looking at this is going to be at -3, 4. going to use these 2 points to create my inequality. The equation would be y equals, but I know that this is an inequality, so it's going to either be less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or greater than. I'm just going to skip a little space here. My intercept is at 1, so I know that the letter b will be plus 1 at the end. And then my slope, I'm just going to use the formula because I'm really getting all bugged out from this picture. It's really confusing me. So the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that would be 4 minus 1 over negative 3 minus 0. 4 minus 1 is 3. Negative 3 minus 0 is negative 3. The slope of this is just negative 1. It doesn't look like it, but it is. So this equation would be y equals negative x plus 1. But then we need to actually pick the type of symbol to use. It's either going to be less than or equal to or greater than or equal to because it's a solid line. The solutions that are shaded are underneath of this line. And we would have to pick a point that works in here. So if I'm looking here at the points that we could use, it looks like we could use 0, 0, which would be right here. So when I plug in 0 in for y and 0 in for x, I need it to be a true statement. So y is blank negative x plus 1. If I put in 0 for y and 0 for x, the only option from less than or equal to or greater than or equal to that would work would be less than or equal to, since 0 is less than or equal to 1, which would then give us our final answer here. The 3 inequalities would be x is greater than or equal to negative 3, y is greater than negative 1, or y is less than or equal to negative x plus 1. Now this was way more confusing than it had to be because the actual graph itself was confusing with the way that you can't really see the x and y axis, the way that they went by 2's instead of 1's, and I don't love that problem. But on a quiz or a test, it'd be way easier to see, and I promise you that.